Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on the Daily Racing Forum YouTube. I'm Gino Buccola alongside Ashley Mailloux. And Ashley, we have a huge weekend, in particular, a big Saturday all across the country. Big days at Santa Anita, big days at Gulfstream, big days at Aqueduct. We're going to head on over to Santa Anita to take a look at a couple of the big races that they have. A few grade ones on the menu at Santa Anita, and one of them is the Kilroe Mile that we're going to jump on into. That's race number 9 as we take a look at the field here. Ashley, we have some horses who are just in fantastic form right now, like Mi Hermano Ramon and El Patente. Mi Hermano Ramon has been facing some of the absolute best turf horses, and El Patente has just been razor sharp out here in Southern California.
Yeah, they are certainly the big two names in this field. I think there's a couple of other horses, though, such as El Mendaris, who's been close in those efforts 2 and 3 back that could improve. And going to be interesting to see how this field plays out, knowing that there's a fair bit of speed on paper with only 8 horses. I feel like there are at least 2 or 3, Gino, that want to be in the mix early.
Well, that leads us perfectly right into the Timeform US pace projector, and we can see what Timeform US thinks. No surprise to see a horse like Air Force Red. Actually, generally, when he's going longer, he's pretty close to the front end. He can sit a little bit when they're sprinting or maybe going down the hill, but mile distances, you're going to usually see him up front. Cabo Spirit, he stretches his speed usually at longer distances, so I'm kind of curious if they'll try to get aggressive with him. And then you have El Patente, who has that natural speed, but he can also sit.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. I agree. Air Force Red will go. I think has to go in terms of his performances. He just seems more comfortable towards the front end. And if for some reason he were to catch soft fractions, I think, he'd be a major player. But I don't think that's going to happen with the 3 El Patente, as you mentioned. Awesome recent form. He likes to go. He doesn't need the lead, Gino, to necessarily win, but he wants to be close to the early action.
Let's meet the field for the Kilroe. We'll start on the inside with the number 1, Mi Hermano Ramon. Here's a replay of the most recent race. And I mean, Ashley, when we look back at his last 4 or 5 races, it's just so tough to knock his overall form. He shows up every time. His buyer speed figures are all in the upper 90s to 100 range. And this is a really good effort, finishing a close 4th in here.
It is. I don't think he had a perfect trip. I think there are little things that maybe could have gone better for him. You can see the outer flow there was moving much better in the stretch than there of the Pegasus World Cup turf. But overall, I love that he fought in there. He hung in there for as long as he could, still 4th best. And it was a step up for him. First time in the grade 1 water. So obviously stick with that. But I do think this is a softer field than he faced at Gulfstream Park last time out. And another thing, a horse that typically doesn't leave California. He did it once to race in Kentucky. He did it to go race at Gulfstream down in Florida. I think he handles himself well. So excited to see him back locally at Santa Anita.
Yeah, I mean, when Johannes isn't in the mix, he's become kind of the tip top of the SoCal runners at around this mile. So just no knocks on him. He's a really cool horse right now. Air Force Red, we talked about him in the pace projector a little bit, Ashley. I figure he's going to be on the front end. And the thing about him, he's a dangerous horse if nobody else goes with him, because he has that good speed. But I do think in here there are a couple others that are just naturally quick and will probably be putting some pressure on him.
And that's exactly what happened in his last win. No one went with him. And I know that wasn't a stakes race, but the names behind him, it was actually a very salty bunch. Yeah. They just let him walk the dog on the front end. When you see a horse like this go 48-3, good luck catching him. They didn't. He was much the best. And I think kind of looking at his performance last time out, he did the dirty work on the front end. He was stretching out to a mile for the first time since the win at a mile and a 16th. And I thought it was a good performance. I just think El Patente was better. Seal Team is a horse that's had some hype. He's still trying to figure out. He runs well in here, but no doubt about the winner. Air Force Red, in my opinion, Gino, still going to need to step up. He's not really stamped himself as a 2-turn horse in my mind.
Completely agree. I mean, positive, he finished in front of Zio Joe and Cabo Spirit, a couple of these rivals from this race, but I just don't know why he's going to be able to turn the tables on El Patente, who has that kind of tactical advantage, can sit, and is just in fantastic form right now. So as we move along from Air Force Red, we move to the number 3 in here, Ashley. And I mean, just a fun group when we get into horses like this that are sharp. Got to give Dan Blacker a ton of credit. They were successful on the global stage with Straight No Chaser, one of the best sprinters in the world. And now they've got a very sharp runner in El Patente who just continues to step up and pass every test every time they put something on his plate.
And another horse they've had to be patient with. He's had a couple of little minor setbacks. You saw the gap between the races in August of 23 to June of 24, then a couple of months to regroup. And feel like this year he's gotten better with each of his starts. He comes in here off a career best buyer speed figure of a 104. And we talked about him. He likes to be forward, Gino, but he's fine with a target in front of him early. So if Air Force Red wants to go, we know that he can catch up to that rival. He was able to do so last time. And I just think in terms of trip, he may get the best one this weekend.
And that's the thing. There have been a couple races where on paper, it looked like there might be a little like too much speed. And I don't know if he was going to get the trip. He was fine just sitting off. Like he's becoming a real mature individual. And it seems like he's pretty like versatile. You can just kind of switch that button off when you want and put it right back on. I love what they've been doing with El Patente as of late. What do we do with Formidable Man here, Ashley, the number 4, who's coming off that Pegasus World Cup race where he flashed some speed? On paper, there wasn't that much speed in that race, but he had to go pretty quick early to try to hold that position. Now he'll go 3rd start of the form cycle. What do you think about his chances in here?
Well, I didn't like him in the Pegasus World Cup turf. I think that's a really tough task, especially as a newly turned 4-year-old at the time, to jump into those waters. And I'm not really surprised about how he fared in there. It was also interesting to see him back on the lead. I don't think he wants the lead. I think he wants to breed a little bit more, a couple of lengths off the early pace. And he was able to do that 2 and 3 back. It worked out. Different competition, though, when he looked at those groups, meaning the Del Mar Derby and the Hollywood Derby. I think in terms of trip, they will try for something similar. I do want to note, too, a big thing, the blinkers come off. Go down the page. He typically races with blinkers in all of those starts. So I wonder if they're going to try to see if he can relax a little bit more.
That's a key, right? Especially just coming off that last effort where they were maybe too aggressive. Let's just try to make sure he settles and relaxes a little bit. Formidable Man is the 4. Next one up is the number 5, Neat. He's going to be making his first start as a 4-year-old, and he'll come out to the West Coast. He had a pretty solid 3-year-old season when you look at some of the races he was in, a multiple graded stakes winner, Ashley, and he faced very nice company, lost to Brilliant Birdie in the last 2 starts of 2024. But I think overall, his form is probably pretty comparable with these, but we don't really have a race from him in a few months. And I would love if there was one race before this one to kind of shake the rust off and he could go second off the bench. But his form kind of stacks up with this group. He'll just need to get a little bit faster.
He's obviously talented, 6 for 11 in the career, but I agree with you. I mean, he's been training at the fairgrounds. You think they might have been able to find a turf spot. I know there was some bad weather down there in Louisiana for a fair bit, but I would have liked to seen at least one race, as you mentioned, in his return to the races. The barn, though, very good with this angle, kind of a shocking number for 2 to 6 months off the layoff, 33%. It's pretty significant when you look at it that way. I just wonder also in terms of racing first off the layoff, what is the strategy going to be? Is he going to be far off of it? Because that's what he was before he went to the shelf, and he could make a late run. I just think in this group, Gino, you can be a closer. I don't know if you want to be as much of a closer as he's been, because some of those fractions have been very quick in those last 2. I don't know necessarily if they're going to be that quick. We're talking about sub 45 to the half.
I completely agree with the analysis there in that if you're a deep closer in a race where there's a lot of like one-dimensional speed horses, that's fine. But these horses can finish. Some of these horses can sit and still finish. So I'm just not sure, like you are with running style. I just really have to see one from Neat, I think, this year before I get a little bit more, want to get more involved with him in the mix. So the next 2 horses, Ashley, I thought could be a little bit interesting, maybe more outside the box horses if you wanted to look for some value. Zio Joe actually beat El Patente a few starts back. So we know he has a ceiling that's pretty high. And then in his most recent start, it was his first race after a few-month break. He didn't run all that poorly when finishing 4th in there. I don't know if you can hear the sirens. They're probably coming after me in the background. So they're looking for me here in the New York studios, the DRF. But Zio Joe just kind of was waiting, was kind of stuck inside behind horses. And then once he got room late, he actually did stretch his legs pretty well. So I wouldn't be against anyone who kind of could see him as a value play or maybe a horse that could get back to a pretty high ceiling that he had a few starts ago.
And I think they're looking for a rider switch here in hopes of maybe getting some different tactics from this horse. I don't like his last 2 trips. I think he's been too far off of it. Has had too much work to do. But I think when you go to the efforts 3 and 4 back where he's sitting mid-pack early on and he can make a run, if he can get a trip like that, I think he's a major player. I think he might have the jump on a horse like Neat, who's racing off that long layoff and also likes to close from off of it. He's going to be a good price in here. Like I said, I think Kyle Frey will put him in a good position. Out of the bigger prices, I do find him intriguing as well.
And then another one right next door who you kind of mentioned earlier, that horse who you thought could have a little bit of a shot, Almendaris. And what's nice about him, again, I like horses like this, Ashley, when you know what their ceiling is. You know that if they were to show up and get ideal circumstances and run one of their better races, that's absolutely good enough to win and beat a field like this. The only concern we have with Almendaris is he's kind of one-dimensional in the opposite way, right? He's a deeper closer, so he needs a little bit of help up front. But when you look at the races where he's second to Conclude, he's second to Johannes, any effort like that would put him right on the wire in here.
It would. I didn't like his effort last time out. I have no clue what happened really in the Seabiscuit. Maybe you can find a couple of things where he got floated wide, but he really didn't fire, and he took a ton of money in there. He was 3-1. But I agree with you. I think there are things to like in the terms of, hey, if there's race flow for him, he'll be closing late. My one knock on him, Gino, as I can admit, I'm a fan of his, is that he just doesn't win a lot. And those wins, when they've come, they're not at stakes level. At stakes level, he's getting those paychecks. He's not getting the main paycheck. And for me, depending on the price, if he were to be third choice in here, I don't know how appealing that would be on a betting board.
Yeah, a couple of those runner-ups at short prices were with my money on him on the win end. So I definitely remember those efforts, Ashley. We round out the field with Cabo Spirit. What concerns me a little bit with him, his big win, his kind of claim to fame, was when he caught a field that didn't have a whole lot of speed, and it was longer, and he was able to get out front, slow things down. In that John Henry, they went 50 plus, sub 50 fractions, or more than 50 to the half mile. So I just don't know if this is the kind of trip he wants going shorter. Is he going to be able to sit and pass horses like El Patente? I can't envision the trip that he gets in here.
Yeah, it's really tough to say, because it seems like they try to go to the lead or they try to sit just off of it, and it typically doesn't work out either way. I mean, this is a horse that you go down the page. He has had some really nice graded stakes wins, and I don't want to take anything away from him, but it feels like as of late, especially in the last year, they've tried to take him back to those longer distances, 1.25 miles, 1.5 miles. That hasn't worked. They cut him back to 1.1 miles. Now 2 consecutive mile races, maybe there's some upside there, but knowing that several finished in front of him last time out and seeing the trip that he's going to get, he hasn't shown enough late in the stretch for me to endorse him.
So as we finish up the race preview, let's move to selections. And I got to give a little shout out to Bobby. I got to give Bobby a big hug, producer Bobby and Lucia. I'm in the studio. I'm from the West Coast out to the East Coast for a couple days this week. Ashley, you're going to go with El Patente on top. And I mean, it just makes sense. He's in such great form right now.
Yeah, I'm really not creative here. I think these will be kind of the top 2 in the betting choices, El Patente and the one Mi Hermano Ramon. We'll be very curious to see what the price difference will be on them come Saturday. And again, underneath, I'm not really that creative. But the horse that I use in the 4th spot is Zio Joe, who you use on top. And I think if the race flow is correct, if Kyle Frey has him in the mix a little bit earlier, he could be dangerous.
Yeah, I think if he's in like the 8-to-1-ish range, that's probably a price that I'll jump in on for him. But, you know, we got to be demanding as handicappers, and we make sure you get the value that you want in there. Totally agree with you. I thought both the 3 and the 1, those are the horses to beat. I'll put them right in 2nd and 3rd, El Patente and Mi Hermano Ramon. Then I'll round things out with Neat, maybe a wild card who can round out the field here first time as a 4-year-old. So for Ashley, 3176. For me, 6315. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel below. However you're playing, I'm in the Kilroe Mile. We wish you the best of luck.